Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of In Conversation via CSUN's Performance Ensemble Presents with your hosts, Jefferson Denham and Fernando Martinez. I am Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Fernando Martinez.
And today we are very excited to be in conversation with our special guest, Dr. Jade Huell. Dr. Huell. So everyone should know this by now, but I'm just going to state the obvious. It's my spiritual gift. Dr. Huell is an assistant professor of communication studies at Cal State Northridge, is the director of Performance Ensemble. Also, Professor Huell won the Exceptional Creative Accomplishments Award, if I can say it, Accomplishments Award. Mm-hmm. Isn't that right, Dr. Huell?
That's correct.
Because you're so badass that way.
Oh gosh, I don't know about that.
Dr. Huell takes her innovative work by combining poetry, movement, music, and original dialogue to create dramatic work that discusses issues including mass incarceration, the U.S. immigration system, and the military-industrial complex, among many others, all badass, amazing topics. Dr. Huell, we are just so happy that you're here.
Well, I'm happy that I'm here, but I'm also happy that you guys exist. Thank you so much for being our voice to the public and spreading the word of what Performance Ensemble has done in the past, even before I've been here, and since then, and what we plan on doing in the future. So. Well, I appreciate y'all even being here. Yeah.
Well, I would say you, my dear, are probably, for me, I'll speak for myself. I think Fernando would echo this sentiment. You're the reason we're so passionate about it. I mean, you were my first experience in Performance Ensemble, and it's just left an indelible mark on me. And so that's why I'm thrilled to be this, mouthpiece for this and make sure we let as many people know as possible about what we believe to be an amazing program at Northridge. So, and it's all because of you, in my opinion. I know it's been going before you, but I'm just saying. Okay, so now before we ask all our guests to be respectful, we ask all our guests, what pronouns do you prefer?
Oh, she, her, hers.
She, her, hers. Fabulous. So Fernando and I are big believers in the idea that our life experiences certainly influence and inform who we are and our art. We're fascinated by life journeys. So our conversation with you, Dr. Huell, will be divided up into 3 parts, 3 acts, since we're theatrical that way. Act 1 is birth through high school.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Act 2 will be your 20s through now. So the grown-up you know how we're all pretending to be grown-up. So we're going to hit that. And then Act 3 will spend time focusing on Performance Ensemble itself. Sound good?
Sounds good. I'm out for it.
All right, so here we go. Act 1. When and where were you born?
Well, I'm actually from South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, which, probably couldn't be any further away from where I ended up and still be in the United States of America. But yeah, so that's where I'm from. My roots go back to Charleston, South Carolina, where my parents are both from. And so, I've just really been, grown up kind of immersed in a rich history of, Black Southern heritage. As a child, I attended, I went to church with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME, which is the, first Black church established, right? And so it's really, has been like kind of a big part of my formation. I think a lot of my, style and theatricality and even, leanings towards what I'm interested in studying kind of come from that history and background. So yeah, I didn't really move around a lot or anything like that. I was born in South Carolina and stayed there through my master's program.
Right. And now so you mentioned your family. What was your family dynamic like? Because you were just saying that because of your history and your experiences in the church and whatnot, it actually informed you as performing, having an aesthetic towards performance. Yeah. Did your parents, were your relationships with your mother and your father, did that help nurture that sentiment as well?
Oh, absolutely. My mom has always, is kind of still a math teacher. So she taught middle school math, but she was super creative. And so while I didn't pick up on any math or any computation, computers / any kind of that kind of skills, I did pick up on this creativity. So she was probably one of my major influences in terms of just, expressing oneself through creative means. We crafted a lot. We did a lot of crafts. We made a lot of things. She knows how to sew and all that stuff. I also grew up in the dance community. So I was started, I think, in ballet at maybe six years old. So that was a lot of, so between the dance and, church, I used to sing on the choir in church, right? So between ballet, which I was a member of the Ebony Dance Theater, which sounds so strange because growing up in that situation, I always felt like it was so normal, like it was just a extracurricular activity. And it's only probably in the last, decade or so that I realized just how special and unique that is to grow up in a Black ballet company in the South. Like, it sounds insane, but the first exposure that I ever had to any professional ballerinas was a Black woman. So, and my sister is, currently a professional ballet dancer with Kansas City Ballet. Yeah, so she's still, we're still doing the thing. Don't ask me to do any dancing, although I did try to do a split the other day, and it happened.
Okay, so wait, did you try to do the split on purpose?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did see if I could to see if I could still do it, and it happened. There were consequences, but yes, but it did occur.
Honey, help me up, please.
And about a year ago, I took a intermediate ballet class in I think it was Silver Lake, and I almost died. And when I say I almost died, I'm not kidding. Like, I saw stars. I thought the stars were a manifestation of cartoon imagery. It's real. It happens to real people when you can't breathe and you're about to die. And so I saw stars.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not in the same condition, but I definitely have not lost the love of movement.
Gotcha. So you mentioned, by the way,
sound. Yeah.
You mentioned your sister. So how many siblings do you have?
Just one.
Okay, so the two of you, is she older or younger?
She's 4 years younger than me.
Right. So you were always the boss.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So did that dynamic, did the two of you put shows on or do any of that kind of stuff?
We were my family is just very dramatic. I mean, we loved the whole showcasing thing. We were doing talent shows before we knew what they were. We would go to my grandma's house in Charleston, and my sister, I don't know if my sister would do so. She's a little bit more shy than I am, but my cousins, for sure, we would put on so we would sing and whole, what's the name of the show that used to come on, Starfinder or something?
Right.
Yeah. It was something like that. Like, we would always have some kind of showcase to put on. And there was just always something that we were doing as well in terms of, recitals and performances and things like that that my mom and my dad just kind of shuffled us to throughout our whole lives.
And like you said, in reflection, I'm just going to say that I certainly didn't grow up with that kind of support from both parents. So it really is wonderful and miraculous, you know what I mean? When you've got parents that see your potential and help you live into it. So, wow, what a blessing. So, all right, there's the family dynamic. Now, when you got to school, this might sound naive on my end, and I'll own up to that, but you're in South Carolina. Was there did you encounter racism at an early age, or when did you find, because, okay, this is a long drawn out question. Let me just get it out. So my sister-in-law is married to my awesome brother-in-law, Goody. And so their kids are Black. And so when my son first recognized that this was a thing, he couldn't believe it. It's like, wait, why are you're because they're black, and he didn't even think about it. You know what I'm saying? So nobody's born racist. When did it come up in your life? What was the first time that it came up in your life?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. When I used to teach in classes in gender and women's studies, one of the questions I used to ask is, what's your first gendered moment that you can remember when you notice that there was some difference or whatever? But I never thought of it in terms of, kind of racial awareness. And I don't know that I can point to a specific time. I can definitely point to time since then, but I think it's more of a cruel or a slow realization rather than just like a moment that I can point to. Like I said, I grew up with a lot of strong Black people around me. I grew up in an area that was predominantly Black until high school. One very vivid moment that I can remember, and I wouldn't say that this is more about racism than just the racial structure of the community that I was living in. But I remember my parents moved from a predominantly Black neighborhood, like middle class neighborhood, to the suburbs, which was predominantly white. And I did not want to go to the new school at all. But after, obviously I lost that battle. And so I took the bus and went to my middle school. I think I was probably in 8th grade. Yeah, I think I was in 8th grade. I was almost out of middle school by the time we moved. And I remember stepping off the bus, and at the very beginning of the school day, everyone gathered in the gym or the gymnatorium or whatever. And so I didn't know anyone. I was brand new to the school, didn't want to be there anyway. Walk into the gym and I see all these white faces that I'd never had to, see that before. We had a white person here and there at my old school, and they were fine. I had white teachers, they were fine. It wasn't like I didn't know white people existed, but never had I seen like a blanket of whiteness before. And then there was this little pocket of like Black kids in the corner, like on the left-hand side. I remember it was closest to where I was, but I had to kind of look around and see all the white faces. And then there was this like block of risers with all Black students on there. And I just remember standing there like, well, and like, guess I'll go to my block. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, not go there? Wow. So I remember, that moment very vividly. And I think it wasn't probably until, transferring into a school where I was no longer in the majority that I even kind of developed a kind of racial consciousness or anything like that.
And middle school can be so traumatic anyway. I mean, we're going through all these hormonal changes and whatnot, and then to thrust you in a brand new situation like that must be doubly shocking. So then in South Carolina, is middle school 6, 7, and 8, and then 9th through 12th is high school?
Exactly. I had lobbied. We moved in 7th grade, but I lobbied to stay at my old school and won for a year. And my mom like dropped me off at my friend's house. We bused to the school that I wanted to go to every single day. And by 8th grade, she was like, oh no, you are going to this white people's school. So you better go.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're heading to high school.
Yeah.
What was high school like for you?
Oh man, don't make me reflect on high school.
High school, baby, high school.
I was always involved in a lot of things. I think my love for ballet started competing with my love for partying and, hanging out and, doing things teenagers want to do. And so
that was my major, by the way, party.
Yeah. And so I was, kind of torn between some of the commitments that I had made for, all of my life, like, dancing. And I was also in choir in school as well as at church. And then outside of that, we also had a musical theater program, which I was a part of. So, I had a lot of different things that I was up to. And even in addition to that, I was on the color guard. So at our school in high school, Our color guard was a cross between, in the off season, we did like cheer dance, like drill team dance, cheer dance, and just like lyrical, a little bit closer to just, like jazz and stuff like that. But in the on season, we were part of the band. So all summer we rehearsed with the band. We did the flags, did all the things or whatever. So we were constantly busy. There was no time that I wasn't doing that. So I was a very busy teenager. I was always very outgoing, very like sassy, very like
No.
like even a bit of a mean girl, if you will, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of, I would say I was an average teenager. Our school wasn't divided up the way that like you would see on like a Disney Channel or anything like that. It was a little bit more nuanced than that in my school. Lots of people cross boundaries in ways that perhaps they wouldn't if you turn on the television, things like that. And so I was a little bit of in everything. Yeah.
This totally makes sense to me. I don't know about you, Fernando, but I mean, I see all of that embodied in who you are, certainly. Now, I am a little surprised that when you were leaving high school, you became, well, I guess it was communications major, is that right? At Columbia?
Yes.
So was it always a foregone conclusion that you were going to go to college?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was from one of those, it wasn't something that, explicit, like no one ever set me down and said you're going to college or anything like that. I think it was just kind of this, middle class, like in the air, that's just what you do after you go. Being involved in a lot of different things, we would sometimes come into contact with lots of folks from other schools. And I remember meeting a fellow and having a conversation with him. He was from the other side of town, mostly Black side of town. And we were talking and he said, no one told me I could go to college. And those words have stuck with me my whole life. I'm like, what do you mean? Why does somebody need to tell you in the first place that you can go to college? It just represented a whole different paradigm of that not being accessible, not being in the ether, right? So someone having to intervene. And so I think, that just really sticks with me, especially as I'm a part of a lot of different organizations on campus too, that, benefit Black students, Latinx students, our first generation population. It's a different way of being raised, of comporting yourself in the world. But for me personally, yeah, it was never a question of whether or not I was going to college. Both my parents went to college, so I'm not. I think they met I think they met in high school, but it wasn't a question about that. It was kind of what I would be doing, kind of thing.
See, I love that. I didn't have, I'm just going to echo what your friend had told you. I didn't know college was an option when I was younger. Yeah. And it just wasn't, like you said, in the ethos. My parents, even though my father went to college, he was drafted and then played football. It wasn't really something that, I think my dad gave me advice like, truck driver is a good job, that kind of thing. And so you don't know, as you're alluding to, you don't know the possibilities out there. And I think that that's a crime. That's a crime when you can't see that there's so many other options. You just can't think of them because you haven't been exposed to it. Right, so, and I bet you that gives you huge compassion as a professor for all the students who are able to kind of say, yeah, I'm first gen. When I was teaching at Northridge, I'd have so many people say, I'm first generation. I've never, nobody in my family's ever gone before. Yeah. And I just would stand up and applaud because I just think that's when you can see potential outside of what you've been given as reality. I just think that's powerful.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go to Columbia?
All sorts of things. And my final year of high school, I got pregnant and I got married and I spent a year off of school trying to figure out what the heck to do with my life. I went to a community college, and unlike community college here in LA and New York, in places like that. Community colleges were more like, you know, where you go if you don't quite know what you're going to do and things like that. It wasn't part of the plan. I think the kind of system kind of works that way here in a really interesting way, but that wasn't the case. It was just kind of like, okay, I know I want to go on, but I don't know what to do or anything like that. So I did go to a community college. I hated it. It felt like high school to me. I dropped out. Like, I stopped going to class. You know, I was like, I can't do, I'm a mom. Like, what, I can't do this. Like, why am I doing this? And I just wasn't inspired at all. And so I worked for a few years as a retail manager at a store. And one of the women who was there at the store with me, she was an assistant manager at the store with me, said one day that she had to leave because she had to get to class. And I'm like, where are you going? Where do you go to school? What are you doing? And she said that she was in the evening college program at Columbia College. And so I thought, evening college, maybe I could just, that might fit into my life. That might work a little better. And then I think when I did enroll in the school, they did, you know, the evening program was made for people, you know, like me. Either it was for returning students, it was for students who had other obligations, who had bills to pay, who had families, things like that, non-traditional students. And so I enrolled in the college, and I'd always thought I was going to be a writer of some kind, I think. But the English program didn't exist in the evening college. As you can imagine, returning students probably don't want to major in English. They want to major in something that's a little bit more explicitly going to turn into a job right afterwards, right? So they had English, obviously, but not in the evening program. And so the closest thing that you kind of aligned with that, I thought, was communication. And so that's how I got started in this area.
Wow. Okay. So I have to call you to task here a little bit, because both Fernando and I are fans of community college. So we actually found it to be something, well, for me too, I went back to school. And so it was a great launch pad for me. But Fernando, you had a good experience in community college, or no? Am I speaking out of turn there?
No, it was both. I like my first year. I think I had a similar experience as you did, Jade. Right? Like, I hated it. It felt like high school. A lot of students were a lot older than me, so I couldn't. I mean, at the time, I found like I couldn't connect with people because I thought age mattered. You know. And I didn't care about my classes either. But at some point, I ended up enjoying it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, you know, whatever gets us in the game. And I'll tell you what, Professor, I love to hear that. Okay, here you are, a mom with a child. And I think a lot of women, I'm not going to pretend to speak for women, I'm going to ask you, a lot of women can feel guilty about trying to maybe better themselves or get an education when they think, I've got a child, that should be my full-time job. Did you feel any of that pressure at all?
Yeah, I still feel that pressure. I never stopped. You know, I think the pressure and that kind of guilt is really a key part in kind of how I do what I do and why I do what I do, you know? And so, you know, I think I'll tell you a story. So as an undergraduate student, you know, returning student, I was in the communication program in the evening college. And there was an opportunity to study abroad for I think it was summer, maybe something like that. So it was quite a few months. At that time, my son was probably like 3 or something like that. And so, you know, I obviously wanted to take advantage of it. They were pushing it really hard. But I was like, I don't know, I'm a mom, but you know, I had great parents and a great support system. And they were like, you need the experience, like you need to do something other than just be in South Carolina. Just go, it's only a few months, we'll take care of him or whatever. And so I went and I studied abroad in Ghana for the summer. That was my first trip abroad. It was a beautiful experience. It was actually a summer program through NYU, the Tisch School. And so we studied dance and movement and music and literature and met all kinds of people, and, you know, actually practiced. We did a performance at the end of the trip. So we learned from African teachers and things like that. And then we created performance and performed in the community. It was amazing. So I came back after all of that, I guess, I think it was a summer, maybe a little longer. And so anyway, I came back, and my son was like 3, 4. He was going to this AME Christian school at the time. And he had homework. Even at 3 years old, they had homework, you know. And yeah, we had to take him out of that school because it was just too intense. But anyway, he had homework or whatever. And so I think it was either homework or a permission slip or something. And he came home one day and he was like, oh, I have to get, I need somebody to sign this. And I was like, okay, what, you need me to sign your homework or whatever? And he goes, I need my parents to sign it.
Oh.
I know.
Ouch.
And I was like,
oh man. Well,
I was gone for quite a while. And if you're 3 years old, you know,
right,
that's longer than 6 months is a long time, or however many months is a long time. So,
well, now
yeah.
I have to ask you then, because I have a personal theory about this. So let's see if I'm right. But, you know, okay, you are, when you're younger and your child was younger, your son. So when you're taking advantage of things that help you grow as a person, they may be 3, but that sinks in and they see that mom is going for it. She doesn't settle. She's trying to always better herself, always trying to grow. Now that he's older, does he see that in you ultimately? Or do you still, you said you still feel a little bit of guilt?
Yeah, I think so. I think he sees me for who I am. And I you know, I really appreciate that, you know, flaws and all. We don't really hide anything from each other. You know, I just kind of always just kind of told it how it is and everything. Like I've told him that story before and he's just like, oh, ouch, mom, I said that. And I'm like, yeah, you said that. You know.
Wow. But like, how cool is that you've got this great relationship and you can talk about stuff like that.
I think it's just kind of part of our relationship and part of our reality and just part of the unconventional family situation that, you know, we were a part of, you know, that he grew up in.
So. Right. And I think anybody that's watching this, if you are either you've been in performance ensemble or you're interested in it, you said unconventional family, Professor. I don't think that there's anybody in a normal family. I think that's a myth. And so one nice thing, and we're just going to pepper our conversation with little comments like the following. That's one beautiful thing about performance ensemble. Whoever you are as is, that's the entity that we need. And that's not only performance ensemble, but the world.
Yeah.
So to destroy the myth of normality, I guess, is what sometimes it can be crippling. Yeah. And I love the way you've expressed your journey so far. It's beautiful. So ultimately you got your back. Go ahead, Fernando.
I have like 2 things that I wanted to say real quick. The first
Fernando had his hand up earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, nobody pays it. It's fine.
I couldn't see it through your hair.
That trip that you were talking about to Ghana, was that when you visited the castles?
Yes.
Is that like you made us read something about your right? Like that's the trip. See, it's so interesting to get the context for what we.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Actually, go ahead, Fernando. Because I'd like to follow up with that, Professor. Yes, we read that in your textual studies class, and could you just describe in a nutshell, number one, what that paper was about, but your personal experiencing that environment?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as a part of the, you know, journey, I was in school, you know, we weren't on vacation or anything like that. So we were surrounded by, you know, scholars who taught us about, you know, the history of the Ghanaian coast, right? And taught us about, you know, the slave castles that kind of line the coast of West Africa. And they originally served as trading posts for things like spices and things like that. But you know, eventually turned into a much darker trade in humans. And so now, you know, those places are markers, you know, of history and the question around who these places belong to, the politics of them, the who in terms of the community in which they find themselves now, where is a place in their community, what does that place kind of stand in place for in terms of relationships with Africa, for African Americans and others of the diaspora who were stolen and dispersed around the globe, right? So the article that I ended up writing years later, I don't think I wrote that paper until graduate school, kind of just meditates on the feelings that, as an African American, as someone who sees Africa as a potential home place or a place of origin, if you will, what does it mean to experience those emotions in those places and those markers, and how are they set up to kind of facilitate that experience? So the article is I'm sorry, I haven't read it in a while, but it's kind of a analysis of the aesthetics and emotions of the slave castle.
Oh, and it was beautifully written too. So Fernando, you had another comment.
Yeah, I mean, this is because, I'm saying this obviously as somebody who is not a parent. But there was this quote from a show where they said that like kids don't remember who tries, they only remember who shows up. And so like obviously them not seeing you there, it does something to them, but I wouldn't know, I'll leave that to you guys. But yeah, share that.
Well, one thing I will say, Professor, and it's something that my wife and I experienced too, because when you're working full time, and both of us had to work, having a support system of your parents, my in-laws, is invaluable. It's unbelievable. And so, because they grow close to them, okay, for a minute, he was confused on who his parents were, but overall, he knows he's part of this community, and that's just so wonderful and powerful.
Yeah, and he was right. I mean, they are his parents. I'm his parent too, so we all grew up together. There are times, it's gross, but it continues to happen, where my dad and my son are out and they're like, oh, where's your sister, or something like that, and I'm like, no, ew, or
right.
And that's just, it's kind of part of who we are. So.
Yeah, no, it's the village, taking a village kind of idea. So, all right, so you get your bachelor's degree in English in, was it 2006?
It's in communication in 2000, it would have been 6, I think, 2006.
So sorry, that's right, it's communications in 2006. And then, but you would not be denied because you did get an English degree. Your master's was in English. Yes. University of South Carolina, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you made it. You finally got to the finish line. I got my bachelor's degree. You know what I need? More school. How did that happen?
I have another story that features my son about this whole situation. So by the time I graduated from my undergraduate program, he was 6 years old. So he's old enough to know like what happened. He went to the graduation with me. He knows that, I went to school and I was done. He knows what college is. So, mommy finished. And then one day we got a letter in the mail, and it was the acceptance letter for my master's program. And he was standing there with me, and I opened the letter, and I was like, oh, I got accepted. I'm going to school or whatever. And he was like, didn't you just graduate?
You're gonna go to more school?
Like, didn't you just graduate from school, mommy? And I said, yeah, I graduated from school, but I'm going to get my master's. And he just falls out laughing, like just like full-blown laughter. And I'm like, how is that funny? What are you laughing at? And he goes, you're gonna be the master of something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. He knows how to twist the knife, because I always told him, like, I can't help you with your math homework. I don't do math. I'm an artist. Like, I write. That's what I do. And so having heard that I got into school, I was going to be a master of something, and he had to know what it would be, And I was like, I'm going to be the master of English. Yes. And he goes, oh, no. You need to be the master of math. You need to go to math school.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, you're doing this all wrong. You need to go to math school.
Well, you defied your son, and
I
you went to
tried
school
one.
for English, and
Yeah.
so when you that experience also continued to whet your appetite, and then you decided you're going to go for your PhD. Now, was your son involved in that too?
Uh, Not so much. He probably was used to me being in school by then, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Well, then
really,
how did that happen? Because you ended up going to Louisiana for your
yeah,
PhD.
Louisiana State. Well, actually, it kind of goes back to my undergraduate program. One of my professors there, Professor Munsell, he would bring in speakers, professors from USC. And so he brought in a couple of professors to talk to us. And in speaking in those speeches, I learned about a field called performance studies, which I hadn't heard about. Jason Munsell's partner also teaches at USC. And they both went to LSU. Mindy Finsky and Jason Munsell went to LSU, one for rhetoric, one for performance studies, to get their PhDs. And so after going to my master's program, I was a student of Mindy's. She was my advisor there, advised me through my thesis. LSU was definitely on my list to go. I don't even remember what else was on there, but I decided to kind of keep going afterwards, and I think just kind of follow it in their footsteps.
You know what I love about this story too is that, like you said, you grew up in a performance kind of mindset, but you didn't go to school for theater, like
Mhm.
when you went to for communications, let's say,
Mhm.
and your master's was in English. It still wasn't in performance or dance or anything that. A lot of times, and Fernando, I think you'll back me up on this. Some of the people we've talked to, Professor, have said, okay, I did things like that when I was a kid, but I just felt like I had to grow up and grow out of it.
Mhm.
And again, if you're watching this and you have been in performance ensemble or you're curious about it, this is another space where you get to reconnect with all of the joy and all of the play. You know, you're allowed to play. You're allowed to be your full self rather than, come on, I got to conform and be an adult. I got to grow up now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I love that you've kind of, in this weird, wonderful, roundabout way, you discover performance ensemble. And what a wonderful, I'm just going to ask you, is this feels like a wonderful convergence of all elements of who you are.
And that's really how I felt when Jason brought those speakers in as an undergraduate student, and they talked about performance studies, and Mindy talked about performance studies and what it is. And I thought, oh my goodness, I get to write about, and I loved writing by that point. I loved doing theory and research and things like that, but I get to write about things that happen in performance, which I've been doing all my life, right? And I also get to embody that, to actually physically do things as well. And so for me, it just felt like such a natural fit that I hadn't imagined existed in the academic world. So I think once I realized that that was a thing, I was like, oh, I got to learn from Mindy. I need to know more about this performance study stuff,
Right.
Um, and so, and then after that, I mean, I guess, the story kind of tells itself. I love it. I love the discipline. I love the fact that, it's no one telling me what I can't study or what can't be studied in this particular way or how to
Right.
study it. So I think, I really have always been someone who kind of thrives without a lot of limitations on, how to do something. And so being creative and being able to do that in an academic space, and knowing that that was a possibility was a big shifting place for me in terms of
Wow.
do it in the long term. Yeah.
Fernando.
I was just gonna say, because this when you said that you felt like you thrived in a place where there's like no limitations, I feel like a lot of that actually carries over and translates to your directing style, because that's literally what you are as a director. And I will get there eventually. I know that JD has a question, but it's just funny that you say that, because what you were as a student, as a scholar, I think just translated to you as a director too. And I don't even know if you recognize that or notice that, but like I think that when, when we were performing under your direction, it just felt like there was nothing was holding us back. Like it was just like a sandbox. It's like, all right, do something, go, and then like something, like that's just how it worked. So
And
it's
it's a little unnerving because by the
Yeah.
time you get to your class, we've been told this is what you do, this is how you get your grade, blah, blah, blah. And then you just threw all that out the window and gave us complete freedom. And it was unnerving. It was, what? I don't know. I don't know what to do with all this freedom at first. And then it was so liberating. So you experienced that getting your PhD, and then you went to Chicago. I have to say, it's funny. And when you first were talking about your family life, it sounds like most of your family and a lot of my family in Ohio, they never really left this area. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here you are. Okay, now you're in Louisiana. Then you go to Chicago, and this is your. Tell us about that.
I messed up my study abroad experiences. I went to Ghana in my master's program. I went to Czech Republic in my undergraduate program.
Oh my
That's why I was
gosh.
gone so long, because I was gone for a whole semester, and that's why he didn't know if I was a parent. So yeah, switch those around. I don't know what happened in my life. I'm losing it.
So much life experience. You got to kind of keep them straight.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow, Czech Republic.
I actually have like a degree in like Central European studies from my.
Of course you do.
I can count to like 5 in Czech. Like it's nothing.
So, did you show your son? Look, I can do the math. It's in Czech.
So yeah, I didn't go to Ghana until my master's program, which makes more sense about why I was writing in
Right.
Yeah.
And we are slowly getting to when you find yourself in California, but let's get to Chicago, because that's my hometown, and I love the fact that you were there. So tell me about the things that you were doing there.
I think, first you just have to say that like during my PhD program was the most eye-opening, beautiful, theatrical experience of my whole life, community experience, right? It's just a community of art. We were a community of artists, all of us from different places. It wasn't, everyone was from somewhere else mostly. And the folks in my PhD program are my colleagues and my friends to this day, and we created performance together. We created original performance. We performed in other people's performances. We wrote original. When I went to my PhD program, I told my advisor, Ruth Bowman, who is one of the most important people in my life. I told her, I was like, I don't want to, be on stage or write or perform. I just want to write. I'm happy just writing. And by the time I graduated the PhD program, I had directed more performances than I think anyone else had up until that moment, within the time span of their graduate program, because I just got, I think that part of me just woke up and I was like, what? I can make things out of nothing and people will help me? This is great, So there were people who, did the technical side, were really awesome with that. We had a space, a big black box that we all put our blood, sweat, and tears into, that, just became the center of activity for all of us. And so, after my graduate program and having that experience and being in so many actual shows, being a part of plays, directing, co-directing, I assisted directed a piece for my advisor, who's an amazing director. We also, went and saw everyone's shows. It was part of the culture. So shows were our life. And at the same time, we wrote about them, we theorized, we took classes. It was just a really great intellectual and creative community that was there. And so after all that was over, obviously I'm like, what do I do? You have to get out there, you need to get a job, you gotta do all the things. And so in my job search, I during the PhD program. Yeah, I think during the PhD program, there was a summer program at Northwestern. And it was a Black feminist performance studies. program. That was just the topic of a kind of recurring program that they do for potential PhD students, I think. And I was a part of that group and I loved it there. And so by, I don't know, just luck, when I was graduating, and this would have been 2012 or so, they began, E. Patrick Johnson began this program at Northwestern called the Black Arts Initiative. And the goal of the initiative was to really celebrate and further the work of folks who were doing Black art. And so we are really interested in Black art and Black art specifically in Chicago and the history of that for that first inaugural year. And so I was a part of planning programs and bringing in speakers and doing conferences around those issues. And so it was just a lot of fun. And so I was the first postdoc in that program. So I guess luck and
Wow.
networking, and it was a beautiful experience, a beautiful group of people, lots of those scholars. I read them every day by accident that I was like in this group with. I'm like, yes, so a really good experience there. And so I think, once I was in the postdoc, I was still under that same kind of magic, like, oh, this is a place where, all of my interests kind of combine. One of the things that, I hadn't quite thought I had enough of or really been exposed to was Black studies, Africana studies, diaspora studies, African American studies in my various programs that I'd, been into. When I was in English at USC, I also did a graduate minor in women's and gender studies. So I even felt like I had more exposure in gender studies than I had in African American studies. And so this program was so special because it kind of merged African American studies and performance studies. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is what I want to do. So to sit in that chair and be able to kind of like, my office was in the African American studies building. So I was able to interact with the faculty there who are amazing. They read my work, read my dissertation. Like, they were so generous. I gave talks there. It was beautiful. And I taught a couple classes while I was there as well. And then I also got really involved in the art scene in Rogers Park. Yeah, and so I was a part of a Rogers Park Arts Association, and so it just started at that point, arts organization. And so the mission was, it's lots of artists that live in Rogers Park, and so the idea is to utilize the artists that are already there to help impact the community within that area, which are a lot of immigrants, a lot of really diverse community. I think it's the most diverse community in Chicago, which can be very segregated, right? So we did all those things. We did like projects. We had this one cool program where at each stop on the L, we had some kind of art event going on. That was a lot of fun. So all stuff like that. And so yeah, I was on the board of that while I was there. I love Rogers Park.
Well, Chicago, I think, I don't know if everybody knows, maybe by now everybody does. It's quite an artsy town.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the second city, I know, but boy, theater, music, street art. I mean, it is a great place to be. And for me, it was a great place to grow up. That's why I'm so thrilled you were there. But you probably thought to yourself, Professor, I love these people. I love where I am, but God damn it, it's cold. So then you thought, I got to get the hell out of here. I don't know if I'm reading your mind or not, but did anything like that occur to you?
Yeah, well, I almost lost my feet. So there's that. I'm from South Carolina. I didn't know what kind of shoes to wear. And I was convinced that I was dying and my feet were rotting off. It took a good hour to restore feeling to my feet. And so after that, I got a North Face coat, I got some Uggs, and I stuck it out for another year. And I wasn't dying to leave. I love Chicago. The
I
cold
love
was
Chicago.
awful,
Yeah.
but it was time to get a job. Postdocs are great. It's beautiful. If you can get one, please do. I would definitely suggest it to all graduate students out when they finish their to really, really apply for those. They're wonderful opportunities.
Well, that'll be Fernando, by the way.
That will be Fernando. And so I'm so proud of. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm sorry.
We'll get to we can gush over him in a minute. But all right, so I'm trying to get us now to Northridge. So you find yourself looking for a job, and you look around the map and you go, where do I maybe not need my UGG boots?
Right. Well, before that, I ended up, I was teaching a class. I co-taught a course with Soyini Madison, which is amazing. And so it was just beautiful to be up under her and everything. And one day I got a call in class, and I would normally not answer it, but I was, wasn't doing anything at the time. I think we were on break. And it was the department chair for the institution where I got my undergraduate degree from. And apparently someone had vacated their position and asked me if I would consider coming to Columbia College. And so I ended up back at Columbia College in my hometown as my son was about to graduate from high school. My office was in my old theater professor's office.
Oh, man.
All the folks in the department were my former professors. So yeah.
Talk about full circle. So you must have thought, okay, I've arrived. Now here I am. This will be me, right?
And it was a beautiful experience. And I think even Fernando, you met the CC players, yeah?
Yeah, that's where I met you.
Yeah, I thought so. And so I met Fernando at a performance festivals, and I would bring students from Columbia College students to the festivals, and they would perform and participate in the activities and things like that. Also a beautiful place for the students to get to know each other and make long-term allies around performance studies. But yeah, so I ran the performance group there. And we would travel and do different things. It was it's a women's college. So they were all women, and we created some beautiful work together. They were great students. I love them, still love them. But then the job at Cal State Northridge came up, and it was as if the call was written, like I wrote it myself, And so I'm like, well, I can't very well not apply to this. My son's going to be in college at this point, And so I bit the bullet and filled out the application. And
why do you think the call for the position at CSUN really stood out to you?
Well, they were interested in someone who could run a performance program, which I was essentially doing at my other job. For me, it was a great mix of research and teaching, which at the other school at Columbia College is basically primarily a teaching institution, which is great. But in the position I was teaching, so many classes and involved in different programs, it was impossible to really, engage in my research in the way that I would have wanted to. And so I think those things primarily, but also I think I want to say that they were interested specifically in someone who studied Africana studies or some ethnic studies in addition to performance. And so it was really kind of what I could have wrote it myself, like, this is the kind of job I want,
Wow. Now, okay, so you're on your way to Northridge, but somewhere in here, I'm going to just say 2 words to you, and then we're going to elaborate. Mm-hmm. Javon King. So somehow in here, you met this young man. So how did you meet your husband?
Yeah, we met in Chicago. He was working as a cook. He still works as a cook, but he did experimental theater in Chicago. And so that's kind of what he did when we were there. And so we crossed paths, and I don't know, we just never really, I don't know, it just became a thing. And then when I went back, he stayed in Chicago for a year after I left, when I first went back home, and we just did long distance. And I think we met up like every 3 months or something like that, and then got tired of that. He moved to Columbia with me, and we just been ever since. Before we got married, right before I moved to LA. So we got married right before, like in July, before I started in August. So it was a lot of change at one time, but it
Oh
was
my gosh, no kidding.
cool. Yeah.
Do you remember your first kiss?
Do I? No, I remember he was all nervous and weird acting, and like he was obviously trying to kiss me, but he couldn't figure it out.
Cut him some slack.
I remember that part.
Oh, that is hysterical.
Yeah, our first date was like at a like a custard place, like ice cream, like an ice cream like parlor kind of place or whatever. And I don't know, it was so funny because he had done a show and he was like obsessed with the reviews on the show. And so we were like talking about that, and like, I know about that kind of stuff, but I'm like in performance studies. I'm like, why do you care? Like what other people think, like what is art? Like, and so we were having like, kind of artist banter and things like that. And
okay.
We coalesced over that. No, I don't remember our first kiss.
All right. He does. He's heartbroken that you can't remember that. No, I'm kidding. But I love this, that he's a performer and he can cook. I mean, win-win. And from Chicago. Okay. Win-win-win. All right. So you get out here.
From Ohio, like you.
I know. See?
Yeah.
I just love that guy. All right. So segueing awkwardly into Act 3. So let's talk about Performance Ensemble here at Northridge. And before we do, I just wanted to tell me, is this your dissertation, Performing Nostalgia, Body, Memory, and the Aesthetics of Past Home?
Yep, that was my dissertation.
And so what I love about just the title of it, and I think it's being encapsulated very well in our conversation, Performing Nostalgia. I mean, I think nostalgia conjures up all these feelings of like, oh yeah, like home, like you were saying, past home, and but putting it in your body, right? And then you're experiencing it, and it pulls up even more memory because you're experiencing it by utilizing your body. It's not just an academic exercise.
Right.
And I think that's perfectly the way I experienced it, the way you approach Performance Ensemble. And that was what was so powerful. So I think for me, I'm just going to quickly say, I had been an actor, for years, and I had let all that go by the wayside. And by the time I got to Northridge, I guess I didn't really know what to expect, but I was excited about, just meeting you. And the first day, again, we're in this black box and you give us all chalk and we can draw on the walls. And I'm like, my mind, you must have seen like smoke coming out of my ears because my mind is like, what is this?
Well, your mouth was a gas for at least 3 weeks.
It's true. And so what I'm trying, this is why I knew this was special and it's profound. And dare I say do you say this the best kept secret or the worst kept secret? I'm saying it's the worst because it's terrible that it's a secret.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're not screaming this from the rooftops about this program, because
I think we don't know what rooftops to scream from. It's a mystery. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
And as you're watching this, maybe you feel the same way, and maybe there's somebody you can think of that you can recommend this program to. But what I found was, because here in college, whether you're undergrad, getting your master's or PhD, it can be very academic. And this was putting it, like your dissertation said, Professor, into your body, your life. You were owning it. It wasn't just some mental exercise. So that was my first. And I know, Fernando, I already asked you about your first. Might as well repeat it, though, because your first encounter with Professor Huell. I mean, I know that you had already shared like your first time being in a performance ensemble setting. But how about when you first worked with Dr. Huell?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we've never talked about that.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. Well, for me, it was interesting because, like Jade has said, like I had experience beforehand, and at that point you were the third director for PE, and it's like, man, another change. And it's just like obviously having getting to get used to everybody's um I don't know, method and direction, right? So like you have to get used to stuff like that. Um, I think the first thing that came to mind was like, hey, Pettigene, I remember you. It's so weird that you're directing here now. Um,
Mhm.
but also just thinking of just like how loose but not loose everything felt. You know, it's sort of, I think controlled chaos is probably the best way to explain it. It's like it's almost like everybody's just like running headless chickens, you know? But they know where they're going. That's what it felt like to me. And I don't know, it I felt like the years prior I had been sort of finding my way in performance and just like figuring out how I want to perform and the things that I want to talk about, and I never really got to do that for whatever reason. And until, you know, Jade came in, I felt like I found what I wanted to talk about, and I found ways of doing it, and I felt like whether it was good or bad, like I was really proud of the things that I did, and that's sort of what happened when Jay took over. But I think that my first experience was definitely a sense of controlled chaos, and I was excited about it. You know, like I wasn't scared or nervous to have to get used to another like way of like, you know, listening to your director and performing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like, and it says on the CSUN website, your motto is move and be moved. And I think you can't get to that space until you kind of run around like chickens with your head cut off. But I always felt like it was, I love your phrase controlled chaos, because Professor, it felt like, yes, it was a bit of anarchy, but it wasn't completely out of control. In other words, we always knew and felt like you had us kind of in your embrace. And so you wouldn't let us fall or fail. And you also showed us how to really collaborate. You were saying how you had this great experience when you were getting your PhD of collaboration. And you brought that so powerfully in Caged Bird, which I know that for those of you who have seen it, if you're in Performance Ensemble, you've probably seen it. But I saw this on the website as well, that Caged Bird won a national award for the
That's
production.
right. That's right.
And so, yay, amazing. So when you got to Northridge, how did you feel? Because you've had all this success by now, right? So you've been through grad school and then through Chicago and then at Columbia. So when you first got to Northridge, what was your what was your impression? What did you feel when you first got here?
Um, I don't know. Like I said, that even at that point in my life, I had just got married and moved clear across the country. I've been several places and things like that, but I'm from South country girl. I'm like, what in the world, you know? So it was, I think, a little bit of a culture shock for me, and I think also it was just a lot of change at one time. So I think that first year that I was here was just really difficult, right? I felt like, how do I be myself in this new space? It's the pressure of now being on a tenure track job, meaning there's certain expectations that you kind of have to do. I think because it was my first year, the chair of the department was thinking, hey, let's let her get her feet wet before we throw the performance ensemble on her. And so in the first year I was like kind of just unmoored. I felt like kind of set adrift because performance is the kind of thing that grounds me. So that I was just kind of like, oh, where do I, how am I, what am I supposed to, okay, I guess I'll teach these students. So I think I was a little out of sorts for the first year. I think that things started coming together for me more in the second year when I started directing again. And I think the most clear difference for me, teaching at CSUN than any of the other institutions that I've been in is just the students are like super eager and just super earnest. Like they just want to do the things you want them to do. They just want to learn. They just want to be there, they're like super respectful, and you know, if as long as you make them trust you, then they'll do whatever, they'll rise to the occasion. And not that I hadn't experienced great stuff with other students in other places, but this group is just particularly earnest to me, you know.
Well, you inspire that kind of reaction, I think. And so once that fire was ignited, oh my gosh, we were just going to town. So,
and then all the diversity is not something I'd experienced so much in my life as well. I mean, for the most part of my teaching and learning experience at Columbia College and at LSU, and even to some extent at Northwestern, it was, you know, pretty black and white, you know. Mostly Black students, white students, few international students here and there. But the breadth of the diversity at CSUN, I was just like, wow, I can use all of this. You know?
Oh my gosh.
Way more paints to paint with. So I just,
right.
You know, super exciting to like some of Fernando's work, for example, in one of his pieces about gentrification, right, that like talked about how the city is you know, divided up and intersects with, you know, different ethnicities and histories that those ethnicities bring. It's just beautiful and really interesting work, and it just kind of, you know, like I said, kind of broadened my it added a lot more paints to my like canvas, and so I'm really excited about that. You know, that kind of fuels me.
It was beautiful, and then so the pandemic hit, and you had to more change. I know, and more pivot, more change. So how have you weathered that? I mean, I know we're going to get to the current state of things.
Yeah.
But when that first happened, and you had to pivot, I mean, that obviously was a huge challenge.
Yeah, it was, you know, it hit everybody, you know, kind of out of the blue. And so it was kind of, I think it was almost the end of the semester or something like that, but not quite. And so that was a little difficult to just kind of switch from, you know, a place where everyone is literally rolling on top of each other, trying to figure out how to make a pretty scene, to we should not be even touching each other. You can't come within 6 feet of one another. We can only do things online. So we had, you know, planned to have a show that semester where, you know, obviously it would be more interactive and it would have been live. But we had to kind of shift to an online space, which, you know, oddly presented a lot of different opportunities that live performance doesn't do. So it really kind of opened your eyes as to what's possible through performance. I don't think performance will ever be the same after the pandemic. I think that these lessons and the aesthetics of it, the possibilities for how to present bodies are going to be so different now, because we've been, you know, under these pandemic conditions for a little while, and that's going to stick with us. But yeah, it was difficult. Fernando and I wrote a paper about it. We wrote an essay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was called Fail 2020.
Yeah, before we ask you about that, I wanted to ask you, because we had, like, JD and I have had members from that ensemble when it transitioned to online.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we got it from a student's and a performer's perspective, but I guess I want to know what it was like for you as a director and as, you know, somebody who was, I don't know, because like I feel, to me, I feel like it's just like a customary PE thing where like you don't really have anything until the day before the show, you know, like suddenly you have a show. What was it like for you to, I don't know, because I imagine that you lost a lot of pieces, that you lost a lot of ideas, or that they had to, you know, be, I don't know, reworked, redirected, translated to something that could work online. Did you lose a lot of, I guess that's what I'm asking, is did you lose a lot from in person when you went online?
Yeah, I think so. I think I lost touch and movement. Like when you're on stage, or when you have folks on stage and they touch each other, they're no longer people on stage. That's something else, right? That is you know, different emotion. It inspires a different emotion in the audience when two people are touching on stage and when they're not, right? So that was something difficult to kind of reckon with, especially from someone like me with the like movement and dance background, you know, even though I don't really dance a lot, almost the direction that I do is very movement oriented. And so I think that was probably the most stark difference. I think we're able to capture the the essence of some of that work through movement online. You know, I remember, I think it was Sir's piece, maybe that was there were some folks that, you know, really used their bodies more than perhaps we would have expected towards the end of the semester. It became more solo
Mm-hmm.
or duet based rather than you know, lots of group pieces, and I kind of miss that. I love to work with the group pieces.
Do you,
So yeah.
do you think it's going to be, like you were saying, things will never be the same? Do you think it's always now in the future, maybe this fall, going to be more of a hybrid kind of experience? Or what do you think is going to happen? Let's say a perfect world, school opens up again. What do you think it's going to be like in the fall for PE?
Yeah, I don't, well, for fall, I'm not confident that we'll be back in the fall, but or if we are,
Right.
it'll be probably in some unrecognizable format. But you know, years later, when everything's back to normal again, you know, my inclination is to do everything I possibly can to avoid a hybrid situation. Like I want full live, full body, I want it back to normal. That's
Gotcha.
why, like, but when I say that, you know, I don't think things will be the same, is that I think we'll carry the memory of speaking to each other through the screen, through being in boxes, through utilizing technology differently, through, you know, the collapsing of our home space, our workspace, and our school space into one, right? I think the reality of, you know, realizing life in that way will change all of us. And I think we'll look back at this time, you know, a lot like we look back at, you know, where were you with 9/11? You know, like it's a trauma and a time that, you know, we're all stuck seeing and feeling and being the same way.
You know, it seems to me, and this is why, if you're watching this and you're performance ensemble curious, this is why it's so important, because yes, as we all come back to normal or the new now, I don't know if it'll be normal, but it'll be new and it'll be then or now. We're going to need this kind of expression, this kind of access to real humanity more than ever.
Yes.
So again, that's why I want to shout about it. The three of us want to make sure we tell as many people as possible through this medium and through the personal relationships we have, why this is so important. So, Professor, is there something that we haven't hit on that you would want to tell any future students why this is something they should really consider doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. You know, don't overanalyze anything, and that, you know, you're enough already. You don't have to come in with any special knowledge, special talents. You don't have to have been a drama kid, although we'll take those. Right. Any anything that, you know, you've experienced is, you know, material, is you know, potential place to start. So I would say just do it. Don't think about it. Just jump into it. Do something different. College is supposed to be the place where you try on, you know, different parts of your personality. Why not this one? Yeah.
I love what you said. You are enough. You can just come as you are, and you are enough. Fernando, I know I've asked you this one before, but the same question. Do you have, if someone's watching this and they're considering it, or they can forward this to someone who would consider it, what would you say?
I would say that we have lost a lot and we don't recognize how much we've lost. And I feel like it's just as Jade had said earlier, it is a trauma that, you know, obviously we don't recognize it as a trauma right now until after it's over, right? And so I think one way that we can I think learn to survive that is to be able to express it and what a wonderful way to express it than this, right? So where you can do anything that you wanted. Like there are no limitations. And if there's any good reason to join this, aside from, you know, obviously getting credit or maybe experimenting with something new, it's that you get to release a lot of the things that you're holding on to, because like we're a year into a pandemic, and it's, you know, unfortunately we are in the US, because, you know, and it's like it's not going to get better soon because we're in the US. So what, you're going to have a lot that you're holding in, so why not release it here?
Mm,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. All right. Well, Professor, as we're kind of wrapping up things, I just want to ask a few quick questions, and I'm going to ask you the big three.
Okay.
All right. So first, I just wanted to say, how has your life turned out differently than you thought it might have turned out, like when you were little, and now here you are? Did you think you were going to be one way, and how have you surprised yourself?
Hmm. Um, I think I use a different side. I don't know. For some reason, I thought I was going to be like an architect or something, and now I don't like do math. So like all I do is art.
You're like an architect of souls.
Oh, yes, that.
That's what you do.
So yeah, I think probably the impetus to always want to, like, you know, make things happen, to push things forward, to build stuff is still, it's in there, but definitely not in like a kind of math sciencey way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What do you feel most grateful for in your life?
My family, my health, God, considering everything that's going on around here, and just, you know, any and all opportunities to, you know, do something different, do something, you know, better, right? To help remake, you know, society in a different way.
And you definitely embody that as a lifelong learner. You just inspire that in the people you come in contact with, I say. So, all right, so let's just wrap it up with these three questions, just so we get to know you a little bit better. We call this the big three. So the first question will be asking you what your favorite movie or book might be.
Okay.
Number two, a favorite song or piece of music. Can be something
Okay.
you just heard or something you heard a long time ago. And then
Okay.
lastly, if you have a favorite quote.
Okay.
So
Book.
first, movie or book?
Book.
Book. Okay.
Yes. Kindred, Octavia Butler. And what's the next one?
Okay. Is that the book or the author that you just said?
Oh, Kindred is the name of the book.
Got it. Octavia Butler. Thank you. The next one is a song or piece of music that just speaks to your soul.
I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston.
Yes. Nice. I got that video now in my head. And then number three, your favorite quote.
I'm going to make sure I get it right. I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. Angela Davis.
Angela Davis. Love it. So we'll post, right, Fernando? We're going to put this underneath this video. We'll have, like, in the comments section, we'll put some of the links for these little tidbits. That is beautiful. So Dr. Jade Huell, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your life journey with us today. This has been another edition of CSUN's Performance Ensemble Presents In Conversation with Jefferson Denham and Fernando Martinez. We want to leave you today with one of our favorite quotes, which is from Irving Wallace. To be oneself and unafraid, whether right or wrong, is more admirable than the easy cowardice of surrender to conformity. So always aspire to be your best self and most authentic self. We are so glad that you tuned in today. Thanks for being with us. Stay safe. Take care of each other out there. We'll see you next time, and sign up for Performance Ensemble.
Please.
You need it. You need it.
Right. We'll wave at the camera while staring.